I'm Rosa Mendez, and I'm here at the #1 Long Island broadcast, Monty and Pharaoh. I had the best time ever!
Hey, listen, Daddy, you're listening to the #1 broadcast, Monty and Pharaoh, Daddy, in Long Island. The best pro wrestling broadcast of all time, I think.
Jimmy, I got to tell you, man, it feels good to be back on YouTube. It was quite disappointing what happened to us, but we bounced back fairly quickly.
Well, what else would we do? We're almost at 5,000 subscribers.
Well, speaking of that, man, we need more members.
Okay.
What do you think we need to do to get the people of those 5,000 subscribers to come on and join the team as a Monty and the Pharaoh member?
Nudity is out of the question. Any other ideas?
I don't know, man. I don't know. But what I do have a few ideas.
Well, just like Prel, they should tell 2 friends, and they could tell 2 friends, and so on and so on. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. Check out all our content.
But that's, you know what? That's why you're the star of the show, because guess what? Members get special content. Even we spoke about it. Pharaoh came to me one day and he goes, man, what's the deal? I can't even watch some of these videos because I'm not a member. And I said, there you go, Pharaoh. You got to be a member because this is what the members get. They get free content that none of the other fans that watch this show get.
That's right.
You get free autographs from some of these wonderful stars that come in, right?
Nice.
All you do is you go to the MNP webpage, or right, our own page, and shoot us an email and say, hey, man, I want a picture of Tommy Rich. I want a picture of whatever. And boy, that's on its way.
We give them their choice.
That's right.
We rock.
We do rock.
And you need to rock too. Join. See that?
So yesterday we lost superstar Billy Graham. Can you share your thoughts on superstar Billy Graham and what he meant to you?
Oh man, he was. So when I first started wrestling, he was the manager of Don Morocco. That's how I was first introduced to him, and he was also a commentator. He did the first SummerSlam with Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby Heenan, and so, but you could tell he was a big deal. Like there was a reason he was in the spot he was being featured, and it was about maybe a year or two later that I really started watching old wrestling, and I was just like I was drawn to him. He had that charisma. He had the look, the mic skills, and Hulk Hogan, Jesse Ventura, Scott Steiner. When Scott Steiner was at his greatest, they'll all admit they were ripping off superstar Billy Graham. And Vince McMahon had said if superstar Billy Graham came along 10 years later, and if you had that late '70s Billy Graham, in the mid '80s, he would easily went with him as his next as his Hulk Hogan in that role. So he just charisma for days, and you had tons of muscular guys back then, but you didn't have someone like Billy Graham that had the aura and the charisma and the mic skills, and just put it all together, like you've seen very few people do. And so he was just a trendsetter, an icon, an absolute legend.
Raj, what was your take in the later days of Billy Graham when he was clearly having a lot of emotional statements? Your thoughts on the way Billy Graham seemed to go out towards the end, as far as he said a lot of very potentially offensive things or very controversial things. Any thoughts on that portion at the end of Billy's time with us?
Well, it's tough because he hasn't been well in a long time, and I just find it hard to judge people when they're not at their peak. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And basing someone's life or their career based on stuff they're saying when they're really old and have had health issues for really decades.
Sure.
When I first saw Billy Graham when he was managing Don Morocco, I remember I thought he was like 60. And he already had been having issues with his hip, issues with steroids, and so since the '80s, basically the whole time I've known who he was, he's been having health issues and just issue after issue after issue. So, I just gotta kind of ignore it.
Yeah. No Hogan or Flair without him. That is a fact.
And I mean, Flair has said as much. There's so many guys from that era that if they weren't admitting to take from Billy Graham, they were doing it quietly and lying about it. But he was the guy.
So where's your
I could
stance?
not believe they went with Bob Backlund.
What?
Here
When
we
you had
go.
Billy
Oh,
Graham.
now we're gonna have
Now you've
problems,
done
pal.
it. Now I'm
Are you
rolling up
kidding
my
me right
mark, my mark sleeves. What do you mean? Bob Backlund was exciting.
No,
Oh,
now you got.
geez.
Now you have to elaborate. You think they should have stuck with Graham?
You really think that would have worked if they had turned him
I think
face?
if it was Vince, I think it was Vince Jr., they definitely would have. I don't think you're going national with Bob Backlund. I think you could have gone national with Billy Graham.
It's timing, like you said. 1977. I'm not so sure that was really. There's a
Right.
time and a place for everything.
And
Yeah, and this is no disrespect to Bob Backlund. He's an icon as well. But Billy Graham, he was a draw. He
Hmm.
was selling out Madison Square Garden.
Oh yeah.
He on top. Granted, he had support with the people he was facing. I think he sold it out like 19 times out of 20 in a row,
Right.
or in that span. So I mean, when you have someone that's working that well, why shift away?
Right.
well,